Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Now for something different, as I say, and hopefully that difference will make a difference. You may be wondering why the Internet of Things is of particular interest to a conference that's dealing specifically with smart and big data. I suppose the simple answer is that most of the applications you see for data gathering, data transfer and so forth are intimately connected with the existing and future Internet, particularly through the IP pathways to the application layer, the World Wide Web, texting, email and so forth, and the services that layer can provide, web services, the cloud services and so forth. Coupled with that, when you look at this notion of the Internet of Things, which has been around for some time now, you realize that there is a lot of data being gathered at the sensory level in all sorts of applications, which is adding significantly to that volume of data, the also type of data, all the 3 V's associated with big data. So we need to consider carefully how that Internet of Things concept can apply in different sectors, and in this case, in agriculture. The actual concept goes way back to 1998, thereabouts, when MIT in the States came up with this concept of the Internet of Things, predicated largely on RFID technology, 10% tags, and ubiquitous tagging of things. It was accompanied by a great deal of hype and some rather outlandish claims as to what that technology can do at that time. It did, however, stimulate a lot of interest in that concept, and over the course of time there were these evolving ecosystems of various kinds which were promoted, ostensibly based upon the IoT initiating imperatives that they were to do with the existing Internet, how you connect with the Internet, and it was concerned with the tangible physical space, the interface with objects of all kinds, be they physical or an animal for that matter, that were embedded in, attached to, or accompanied or associated with objects of all sorts of kinds. But that also led to a great deal of confusion, I think, and a lot of fuzziness associated with this concept. And although it was driven very largely by commerce and so forth, with a view obviously on the economics of this particular concept and what it can do for businesses, there was nevertheless still this confusion. There were lots of projects that came along as a result of that, certainly within Europe, and I was involved with 1 or 2 of those projects in Europe. A lot of white papers were produced, a lot of reports were produced from governments and so forth, and particularly the UK government. But one didn't see emerging something that was really tangible, that really supported the concept and the benefits it could possibly provide. We saw lots of objects being connected to the Internet. There's something like 28 billion, I think is estimated, will be connected to the Internet by 2020. What does that mean? It's not particularly clear what it does mean. It's a lot of objects being connected to the Internet. But where is the real value in all of that? And part of the problem is that with the Internet as it was originally proposed, the Internet of Things rather, as it was originally proposed, there was really no sense of direction. It was too general. And that, I think, added considerably to the confusion, misinformation, and so forth. But then we started to see some sense of direction appearing in things like the Internet of People, where, of course, the mobile phone and so forth provided such a very significant technological base for building up social media systems and so forth. But the notion of a particular sector came into it. and that included the Internet of Agri-Things. And indeed, in 2014 and 15, 2014, the UK government Animal and Plant Health Science Strategy looked at the Internet of Things for agriculture. They ran specific workshops and they came up with a report in 2015. But sadly, we've not seen any significant manifestation of what came out of those workshops. And that's a great pity, because there's a lot of benefits that can be achieved by developing an Internet of Things which has this particular sense of direction. It although just recently has manifest in the Internet of Food Things, and the East of England Science and Innovation audit concluded that ICT was a crucial but absent foundation for that particular Internet of Things. I would add that I think the object-connected ICT is a significant absent part of that formation. What is also relevant in respect to that is this data aspect, this large volume of data that is now being accrued in agricultural circles. And we're seeing this future precision in this integration too within farming, and a future that is data intensive. But I think what is missing though is another crucial but absent component, and that's to do with specification and the implementation of a degree of governance in relation to this Internet of Things, particularly where one has that direction and you are identifying a number of challenges which are so important within this sector. Just to give you a bit more insight into the actual ecosystem aspects of this, this is from European Studies, in actual fact, although it's presented here through ID TechX. It illustrates this morphing, as it were, into these IoT constructs which have a particular direction, Internet of People, and of course we've got the IP address-based Internet of Things. That's what one usually associates. But along with this is the concept of having something which isn't IP-based, it has other identification foundation for it, and can address certain issues to do with security, which are problems within the existing Internet-based structure. 20 years on, we are seeing significant developments in the technology, no doubt about it. Not just in the sensing technology, the tagging technology, identification technology, communication technologies, and so forth. Tremendous developments. And very significant developments in the Internet and the web services. But there's still no clear specification for agriculture. We largely support applications, and we've seen many examples of those today, and you're going to see more later on today, with regard to the big data issues, to machine-to-machine communication, and so forth. But still, there's this absence of a specification and this need for governments to address the issues that are presented within agriculture. And my belief is that through an appropriate specification of governments, that would allow more effective accommodation of national and global challenges, specifically relevant to agriculture and primary food production. And those challenges, very significant challenges, responding to world population growth and food security, stemming from the UK report, the Bedington report in 2011, and this institution's own report which followed on from that. But have we seen any really significant implementation of the recommendations that came out of that report? There is a question. And it's possibly because we don't have an appropriate structure in order to accommodate those recommendations. Responding now, and this is very significant because we're seeing a lot of media attention just now, is to do with these critical demands on climate change, planetary boundaries. It's not just about emission, it's about a whole range of planetary issues and factors which impact, they interact with one another, they have impact upon that climate change and its articulation in rising temperatures. There's also the development, the importance of precision principles across farming modalities, which are going to be significant in the development of solutions, not just at local level, through regional, national and international issues. And because there's more and more growth in urban populations, there are needs to address urban outreach and smart city farming developments and so forth. And of course, attention to innovation for productivity and sustainability, what one might call the total connected farm concept. So, briefly looking at precision farming, it's of global importance, securing that future. It's already worth over £1 billion for the UK economy, but it needs that translation of those global challenges into the national, regional and individual farming requirements and the prospective solutions that can be identified. And here I list just a few of those. It's not a comprehensive list, but it's an important list, I believe, for those particular aspects of precision farming. Along with that, we've got the food security challenge itself. And here we are, even based upon that report that came out in 2011 and the 5-step plan from Foley at that time. The question arises, have we actually accommodated those needs significantly since those reports were produced? My belief is that we have not, and my belief is it's because we have not got the specification of an Internet of Things structure that can accommodate those challenges. And very importantly now, of course, the planetary boundaries, which include climate change and its articulation and temperature rises, land uses, water uses, biochemical flows, biodiversity, a lot of which are related to agriculture. Some of those problems have arisen because of agriculture, engineering and so forth. So we actually have a responsibility to address these boundaries. The government itself has announced an emergency with respect to the climate change aspect, but it's not just about emissions. It's more important, it's more significant than that. And it's not a game. One rather gets the impression that, oh yeah, we can reduce our emissions to zero. Isn't that great, chaps? No, it's an international problem, so we need to get it below zero. So there's a lot of requirement here to address these issues in a national way that can also influence the developments internationally. And there are more than 9 socio-economic factors that come into play here, as a result of which there is the development of what's called the donut economy, which is looking to link those two aspects together and identify the space that we can operate as a civilized community, not just in this country, but again, internationally. So, a very important aspect of the challenges that we're faced and why we need an appropriate Internet of Things. Now, one of the ways forward nationally is perhaps through a practical implementation of an Internet of Things within the UK that can address these challenges, that can bring together the capital resources that we have within the UK, notably the AGRIEPICENTREs, and includes the agrimetric centre that has been talked about this morning, and the satellite farms. We can establish a template, if you like, or a test bed for developing an Internet of Things for agriculture that can be embraced within an appropriate governance structure. So that will be covering for each of those nodes within a network such as this. One would be addressing all the data issues that are there, the different sensing modalities and so forth at different levels, from satellite through to ground-based and mobile sensory gathering and so forth. and the communication structures, the urban broadband and so forth, that are relevant within the different areas. So you're addressing the local, the regional, national and international. But we need a governance structure. Also, it's got to accommodate these big data issues, where we're seeing changes in the way we have to approach these data issues. And right down to the process level, where you can see silos of data being generated that need to be appropriately identified in order to manage them effectively. Big data intensive future requires this IoT specific metadata structures and governance to support global challenge solutions. So how do we approach it? Well, you really need a staged approach. And this stems from some of the work I did within Europe on a project where I was technical coordinator, and I was charged with actually dealing with this business of governance and working in collaboration with a professor of international law. And we looked at the ways in which you can actually provide a stage approach to this, looking at preparation of IT statements of purpose, identification of the stakeholder groups, and so forth, right down to identifying legislators and stakeholders, and so forth, and the appropriate tools that are needed in order to establish that governance structure and the matrix associated with dealing with global issues within that structure, recognizing the international tools and the scope for international governance, that allows one to deal with these local, going through from regional, national to international levels in an appropriate way. So that's a very brief indication of what is possible if you apply these sorts of governance aspects to the Internet of Things. I believe that is absolutely necessary. And here I'll just give you some examples of addressing various issues from structural examples, security, safety, energy, regulatory standards, and with attention to technical, economic, institutional policy, and legal aspects. And on operational uses, for example, on privacy, ethical issues, cybercrime, intellectual property, all these issues, very important, but you need the appropriate infrastructure, the appropriate governance structure in order to accommodate them. So, there we are. I think governance is crucial, but absolute foundation at the moment for addressing these challenges. I think it's important. I think we have the building blocks, just need to build it. Thank you for your attention.